Hey everybody, welcome back. I'm Chuck. He's Jason. That's our buddy Teaser. Another episode of Bookends here. First, we want to wish everybody happy holidays. Hope everybody had a great Christmas and a happy and safe New Year right around the corner here. And it's been fun, Jay. I mean, Christmas was fun. New Year's is here now. And sports is in full form. I mean, football last week was tremendous. Week 16, you had 5 teams that could clinch. None of those 5 did. So it's created kind of a wide open Week 17. But before we kind of dive into football, there's other sports going on. And it's been great with college basketball and pro basketball. I mean, pro basketball has come roaring back, and it's fun to have another sport on the board.
Yeah, and I'll end up the end of 2020. It was an epic year, for sports to see things come back after the COVID and the football season that we've had, and to address all the COVID issues that we had, and we'll see how long this rolls into 2021. But Happy New Year, everybody, and then let's look forward to moving forward in the new year, and hopefully we'll get fans back in the stadiums sooner than later. But from an NBA standpoint, they've come back. We've been back about a week now. Teams have played 3 to 4 games. It's been really good. Not a lot of COVID issues. We've seen some incredible upsets. We've seen the Nets go down. We've seen Milwaukee go down. We've seen Milwaukee beat the Miami by 50 plus points, and Miami turn back a couple days later and be able to knock them off. So the NBA's been really, really good. A couple things to kind of look at from some tips in the NBA. Some of the things that we're looking at on the bookmaking side of things is the NBA rest rule. This year they instituted a national televised fine to where if a player doesn't play in a nationally televised game, obviously on ESPN, a TNT, an ABC type game, they get fined for not playing in that game. So players are not going to choose to miss those games, but we're seeing already 2 and 3 games into the season where teams are putting their guys on rest and missing games. So really check those schedules, look and see, back-to-back nights or 3 games in 5 days. Look and see which games are nationally televised games, because it's more likely than not that the superstars on those teams may be taking some rest. And obviously that's going to be a big note in the game. Obviously the Nets already this season rested Durant and Irving. They were 6.5-point favorites, and Memphis went all the way to a 3-point favorite the other way, just simply on that news. So try and be ahead of that news, get that information out there, and that'll go a long way in your NBA handicapping.
Yeah, I think, and then we have hockey right around the corner too. And I think when you look at hockey, every game is going to be a back-to-back. You're going to either play like a Friday, Saturday, or a Friday, Sunday, and it's against the same team. So take a look at that as well as far as travel. How many teams are going to be playing 4 to 6 back-to-backs in a short period of time against tough opponents, maybe some travel involved in there. And look at goalies too. I think that's a big part of it moving forward.
Yeah, hockey we actually put up, added all the divisions, so those are all up. There's no conference, so you've got the Stanley Cup and you've got the divisions. We've got those first sets of games up, so the games that are on January 13th and 14th are up, including the Knights versus the Ducks. Excited to get them back on the ice, and as you said, there are a lot of back-to-backs, and if you kind of look through the history of hockey when teams play those back-to-backs, so those second nights tend to be a little bit lower scoring and maybe have a little bit more.
But this year it'll be against the same team.
Yeah,
so that's the big difference.
But I mean, even back-to-back against the same team.
Right.
Home and home is something that we see all the time, but this won't be home and home. This will be, home. Both games will be at home, and then they'll flip someplace else. And there's a stretch in a lot of these team schedules where they play a home series and a road series. So they actually play the same team 4 consecutive games, not consecutive nights, but 4 consecutive days. So that's going to make some, real interesting hockey. And like I said, NHL, after you play a team, 2 times in a row, you start to get that chippiness. And so games being played, teams that are going to be playing each other 4 times in a row, we could see some extra boxing on the ice this year.
You could, and you think about 2 points at stake for every game. You have 4 games like that. There's 8 points at stake against an opponent in your division within, say, 5 to 6 days. So it's going to be interesting. You play each team in your division, I think, 7 or 8 times. There'll definitely be a Canadian champion this year, so in the Final Four, we'll have a Canadian team as well, and they play each other 10 times. So you can imagine, as you said, a little bit more boxing on the ice. I'm sure we'll see that across the board. But again, before we dive into football, there's one more thing, and it's baseball. Baseball's right around the corner. There's been a lot of movement, but no team more than the San Diego Padres is active right now. They go out and they get Snell, they get Yu Darvish. I mean, they are in it to win it right now, and it's a shame because they're not going to have fans in the stands. It doesn't look like, at least to start the season right now. Yet they're all in, and they are the biggest storyline right now in Major League Baseball.
Well, we talked about it at the end of last year. Making the big deal to get Clevenger. That GM is just doing a great job, and he continued it now in this offseason.
And he's having Tommy John, so they won't have him this year.
Clemens will be out for the year, but I mean, to put up Snell and Darvish already into that rotation with Denilson, Lament, and Richards, and they're going to be formidable. Obviously, that offense is fantastic. We still don't have them favored over the Dodgers. We still have the Dodgers to win the NL, but the Padres are very, very close behind them, and you got to wonder what's going on in Chicago with them kind of dumping the guys that they're dumping there and getting a lot of young kids from the Padres, but really nobody that's going to make an impact this year, and not anybody.
Well, maybe Zach Davies. I think he'll be in the rotation, but the other
to
four
acquire a bunch of 19-year-olds, that probably aren't going to be in the majors, if they get to the majors, 3 or 4 years from now. But some interesting moves, and excited to get baseball back up and running. But we'll focus on college basketball and the NBA and make those little tweaks that we have to do in baseball. But college basketball has been another big source of handle and action. A lot of people playing it. Been pretty good on the COVID side of things. We're seeing a cancellation here or there, but the games that are playing have been really, really good. The Big Ten action has been really, really good. The Zags have completely dominated. We saw a team that really opened kind of 8-1 to win the championship in Gonzaga, and they're down to 2-1, and they look absolutely dominant. They actually this week they kind of scheduled some cookie cutters. They had 2 back-to-back Northern Arizona and Dixie State on back-to-back nights, which not normally you don't see that in college basketball. But they were 39-point favorites in both games.
Right, they had.
So they've just been absolutely awesome. But college basketball continues to light up the scoreboard, and we've got in play on college basketball and first and second halves, and so a lot of action on the college basketball.
And don't forget, guys, with all this going on right now, what an opportune time to have the STN mobile app. It just adds, it brings the sportsbook to the palm of your hand. You can play it from the comfort of your home. We know everybody's kind of busy this time of year. The calendar's turning, but get STN mobile. All this stuff's available, and new signups up to that $100 bonus is still going on.
Yeah, with the $100 bonus, you got to stop the procrastination. You got that. You got that extra Christmas money. Take the trip down into the book. Get yourself signed up. It's a one-time deal.
Extra Christmas money?
Once you get signed up, you're set up. It takes less than 7 minutes that the team member is going to get you signed up. Now you're going to have that mobile app. You have all kinds of funding options with Play Plus, Pay Near Me, so you don't have to come back down to the book again. You can put money in, take money out through those applications, and it's just a great way to have sports at the touch of your fingertips.
Yeah, and you've got all these bowl games that are going on early in the day. You've got some big games coming up, hockey around the corner with the Knights who might have some late start time, so it's just a great tool to have, guys. We're going to dive into football now, and start with college football. I mean, there are some great bowl games, but the two that really stand out are the 2 playoff games. When you think about the Sugar Bowl with Ohio State and Clemson, I think maybe a little bit of bad blood already there. I mean, Debo left the Ohio State Buckeyes out of his top 10, and he made a case for it. He said, any team that's played only 6 games, I don't think should be in the top 10. So definitely bulletin board material. Lawrence is 34-1 as a starter. You might be looking at a game with the 2 top picks in April's NFL draft, and Justin Fields and Lawrence. So it's an interesting matchup. Clemson comes into this game about a touchdown favorite, and we'll see if that bulletin board material kind of plays out for Ohio State in this game or not.
Yeah, I'll start on the Clemson side of things. Obviously, no arguments about them being in the college football.
No, absolutely not.
That, obviously, the Ohio State and then Notre Dame are 2 teams that people are questioning whether they're there, and the Big Ten made the exception to change a little bit.
But I think they are questioning Notre Dame more than Ohio State. I think the fact that Ohio State was undefeated, you can still make a case for them more so than Notre Dame.
I think part of the reason Ohio State question mark is that the Big Ten made the rule change to allow them to play in the Big Ten championship game, and then obviously to go to the college football playoff. They were going back to Clemson, so They revenged their loss to Notre Dame in glorious fashion, really kind of embarrassing Notre Dame in the ACC championship. They've been really, really good since that Notre Dame loss. Not necessarily so on the offensive side of the ball, they're doing what they're supposed to do, but the defensive side of the ball, they've been really, really good, only allowing 17, 10, and 10 in their last 3 games. And that's where I think this game is going to be won or lost. This is actually the highest total on the board, 66.5 of the remaining bowl games that we have left to play. But 2 teams that can go up and down the field, but have very, very good defenses. And that's what Ohio State, has gotten their championships on the last several years. Yes, they've always been able to score, but it's always been on the defensive side of the football. I think Clemson, this is a game where that defense continues to shine and do the things they have to do, and then you'll see Lawrence and ETN and Rodgers and the other guys be able to make the plays that they need to make. Some tidbits here. Clemson beat them 29-23 in the Fiesta Bowl last year in the same situation in the semifinal. Clemson has never won a Sugar Bowl. They're 0-2. So this would be the first opportunity for them to win a Sugar Bowl. They're 4-0 versus Ohio State in bowl games, including 2 wins in the college football playoffs. If you're looking for something good on the Ohio State side, a reason to like Ohio State, they're 3-0 in their last 3 Sugar Bowls, including a college football playoff semifinal win over Alabama in the first ever college football playoff. So they've got some comfortableness down there. On the Ohio State side of things, obviously Fields has been really, really good. Trey Sermon comes off a 300-yard rushing performance against Northwestern. But again, just that short glimpse of them only playing 6 games and playing some of the, we'll call it, softer teams in the Big Ten in those 6 games. I think one of the things you can look for if you're interested in taking Ohio State in this game is to watch the Northwestern-Auburn game. Actually, no, that's after. No, they play today.
Right, yeah.
Northwestern-Auburn game. See how Northwestern looks. See how Auburn looks. It's that Big Ten SEC matchup. See if Northwestern defense is able to stand up. And
Northwestern played really competitively with Ohio State in that game.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You can kind of judge that picture to see where they're at. You know, the only other one from an ACC Big Ten standpoint was Wake Forest, Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was able to absolutely, drill Wake Forest in a bowl game. Not that they did so offensively. I think Wake Forest quarterback had 4 or 5 interceptions in that game that let Wisconsin kind of dominate that game. But, something when you're looking at these bowl games to look at how other teams in the conferences
Wisconsin was down 14-0 in that game, too, and came back to win that game.
And it's tough. The Florida game the other night we watched where they're just missing their players, and bowl games is about who's going into the game motivated and wants to win. But both these college playoff games, obviously both these teams want to win. So look at some of the other bowl games just to see how the conference is matching up comparatively.
Yeah, I'm going to look at the Rose Bowl too now, and I think this year's played at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, Texas. It's not going to be in Southern California due to COVID issues. But you've got number 1 undefeated Alabama against Notre Dame, and Notre Dame's had a great season. Their one loss was to Clemson. They split that series, able to beat them without Lawrence, and they lost with Lawrence. But you look at this Alabama team, and they're a team that during the regular season has averaged 50 points a game, put up almost 600 yards in the conference championship game. They just click on all cylinders. And you look at Notre Dame, and I know you talk about Ohio State, only 6 games, should they be there or not? Notre Dame just got clobbered by the second team who's in. What are they going to do against the number 1 team in the country? And I think you look at Cincinnati and Texas A&M, and with all the different things we've seen in all of sports this year, I think it would have been a great time for the committee to extend to maybe 8 teams this year and give some of those other teams a shot. Give an Oklahoma, give a Cincinnati, a Texas A&M a chance to compete and see how it all plays out. I think it would have added a lot more luster to the bowl games. It would have made it a lot more interesting, and you would have given some of these teams a chance. And maybe you can make a case then for Ohio State. Okay, you're one of the 8, but I think with Notre Dame, I thought Texas A&M should have got a shot to play in this game. They're going to try to say, hey, we're Notre Dame. We've got a tough defense. We've got a good quarterback in Book. But, you look at what they're against, and Devonta Smith and Mac Jones and that offense. And Bama's almost a 3-touchdown favorite in a playoff game. It almost looks like it shouldn't be.
Yeah, if you let the line makers and the bookmakers make the game, obviously probably Notre Dame wouldn't be there, obviously being a 20-point underdog. Interesting that the total is 66 in this game when you talk about Alabama continuing to put up as many points as they have been. Can that Notre Dame defense, which saw Clemson kind of do whatever they wanted to do, will Alabama be able to do the same, especially with Devonta Smith, who just won the Player of the Year and is a favorite to win the Heisman,
right?
And Mac Jones, they've just been clicking, and Harris in the running game. I go back to Notre Dame getting in as the 4, Clemson or Texas A&M is the 5. Texas A&M lost to Alabama by 30 in somewhere in the 30 range. Again, but it was a blowout. And you make the argument for adding 8 teams, and I think that, again, making that argument to add to 8 teams or go to 8 teams is great because it makes everyone feel better that they got in the playoff. It's the same argument of why we went from 64 teams to 68 teams in the college basketball playoff, is to try and get those other teams that are on the bubble
an opportunity, right?
But do they really have a chance? I personally, to add a 6, 7, and 8 to go up against the Alabamas and Clemson of the world is just adding a 28, 30-point blowout for us to watch and to make some team feel better that they can say that they got.
But with that said, I don't totally disagree with when you look at it that way. With that said, it probably just should be Alabama against Clemson. why have the other two games? I mean, you see so many times that it kind of plays out that way for the most part. I know that
then you end up with an undefeated Ohio State team that wouldn't have gotten.
But with 6 games.
But
so,
I mean,
right.
you talk about a Cincinnati. You brought up Cincinnati, undefeated, yet they're still a 7-point underdog to Georgia in their bowl game, and so that's their opportunity to go play that. And
Georgia's a very good team. They play in a tough conference. They're a team nobody wanted to play toward the end of the season, and I don't think anybody wants to face in a bowl game. But you're right, they're a 7-point underdog.
Yeah, and we'll see what A&M does in their bowl game, and see if they choose to come to play and kind of say, hey, we should have been there, or if they kind of take it easy and are just upset that they didn't make the playoff. But these college bowl games have been absolutely fantastic. Scoring up and down. We've seen a lot of trends in the totals coming down from where they opened. But again, some high-scoring games that have been continue to get played.
All right, we're going to jump in the pros now. I think we can talk about Cincy and
Week
A&M.
17.
Week 17. There's a lot of intriguing stuff. Teams that have to win, teams that need some help, teams that we're a little surprised are still in it, like maybe Chicago right now. But let's jump in the NFC first. And Week 17, if everyone remembers, it's all interdivision games. So it's kind of interesting because teams can kind of play that spoiler role who maybe aren't in it. But Seattle and San Francisco, these two teams played earlier in the season. Seattle won 37-27. We know how good they are. They still have an outside chance at possibly being the number 1 seed in the NFC. That offense is good. San Francisco's had a bevy of injuries this year. Looks like no Samuel, no Ayuk, no Williams on the offensive line. Have so many injuries on both sides, but they've been competitive. I love what Shanahan said. Hey, the game's on the schedule. We've got a level that we want to play to, and we expect to play to that level every week. They're dogs in this game, almost a touchdown underdog, but they can play the role of spoiler. And this game's in Arizona, not San Francisco, although they're the home team.
And this game crept up. Seattle was originally opened like 4.5. It's up to 6. They won the first matchup 37-27. It wasn't even that close. This game was 27-7. Going into the fourth quarter. The Niners were able to put up 20 in the fourth and Seattle 10 in the fourth to kind of make that game look like it was a little bit more competitive, but Seattle was really blowing them out. It was a game that Garoppolo got hurt in, that we saw Mullins come into the game. Seattle has been very, very good on the defensive side of the football the last several games. We'll call it 3 or 4 games. Much better than they had been.
I think once Adams came back, I think that really helped solidify the back end of that defense. And he's more like a linebacker. I mean, you look at the number of sacks he has. He's their leader in sacks, and he's a safety.
Yeah, they've been much, much better. And I think part of that, too, is also Chris Carson coming back and giving Russell Wilson a little bit more of that running game to go to. And it wasn't Russell Wilson, I have to do it all. In this matchup against the Niners last time, it was Wilson to Metcalf show. Metcalf had 12 catches for 161 yards and 2 TDs. The Niners just weren't able to stop him. That was essentially, the makeup of the game. The Niners here have, you said it, Shanahan has said this team has come to play. They won last week in Arizona. Interestingly enough, they won last week in Arizona as the road team. And their 2 home games that they played down there, they lost, and now they're going back down there as the home team. So the Niners are hoping to call their Arizona home and hopefully finish out on a 2-2 note. But Shanahan, you saw it last week. They played a competitive game against Arizona. They came to play. Kittle.
That defense was fired up. They
Kittle
looked
was
really
in there
good.
with Beathard. Now their 3rd-string quarterback. Jeff Wilson ran, for a great game. And I don't think there's quit in this San Francisco team. I think Shanahan's, despite the fact that they're out of the playoffs, he's got them pointed forward, continuing to play hard. But like you said, the tools, just enough tools in the shed. They continue to watch guys drop in and out of the lineup. This is a needed game for Seattle. And when I say needed, Green Bay, the Saints, and Seattle are all in that spot of fighting for potentially the number 1 seed. If Seattle thinks that Green Bay will lose to the Bears, then they can get the number 1 seed, and the Saints have a chance to get the number 1 seed. So Seattle is going to probably come to play in this game and come to win. And it's an divisional matchup, like you said at the front, which lends to this. Hey, we lost the first game, we want to come back and win the second game and spoil Seattle's chance for a number 1. And so I think San Francisco is going to come.
San Francisco going into the offseason with a win against Seattle here. Yeah, it's an intriguing matchup for those 2 teams. I'm going to jump to the AFC now, and it's Bills and Dolphins. Dolphins win, and they're in. Probably one of the most surprising teams in football. They've got, they're one of the few football teams that can go to a relief pitcher or a relief quarterback if their starter's struggling a little bit. But you look at Buffalo. I mean, I think Buffalo is one of those teams that can get there from the AFC. I know it's all about Kansas City, but you look at Josh Allen, you look at Diggs, they've gotten healthier on defense with Milano coming back. Buffalo's just scary good. And I think the big key for Buffalo is they're a small favorite, but they may actually be a bigger favorite in the first half than they are in the game because they can do some scoreboard watching. We know what the Steelers have said. We're not playing Big Ben. We're resting all of our guys. We're happy to be the number 3 seed. So if that's the case, if Buffalo gets out to that early lead or they see Pittsburgh falling behind by a lot of points to the Browns, they can pretty much rest their guys. So I think that first half line, watch that first half line. I think it's going to be bigger than the game line. Miami needs to win, though, to get in, depending on what happens with some of the other games. But interesting tidbits here. Miami is 9-2 straight up and against the number their last 11 games, and they're 9-2 towards the over their last 11 games. So there's a couple of interesting facts there, although they've given up the least amount of points of all the teams that are in the playoffs. So it's a big game for kind of both these two teams. I mean, for Buffalo to finish in that number 2 spot, it's kind of good for that young team, but a much bigger game for the Miami Dolphins.
Yeah, on the Miami side of things, they really struggled in Las Vegas last week. They were lucky to sneak out of here with a win. But again, they continue to win. And
the best no-look pass in the history of the NFL.
They have a chance to get to the playoffs, and I think you said it for the Bills here. It's about who plays and how long they play. They're in the number 2 seed, sitting with the Steelers as the number 3 seed. If they were to lose, the Steelers could jump over the top of them. However, the Steelers have come out and said that they're not playing their guys. So Buffalo could kind of watch the scoreboard, and if Cleveland is beating Pittsburgh, Buffalo could probably rest their guys in the second half. I know that they want to get Stephon Diggs, who's had an incredible season, to be the reception leader and the yardage leader, both of what he's leading right now. So I fully expect Allen and Diggs to play in that first half, try and look for each other in the first half, kind of the same way that they did it last week against New England. And then we'll see what happens at halftime if those guys come out for the second half. And then that would kind of open the door back for Miami to steal this game and get 2 AFC East teams into the playoffs. But you're dead right on the Bills being a scary team in the playoff. You kind of watch this team over the last couple of weeks, and they continue to grow and grow and grow, and watch Singletary and Moss. And on that defensive side of things, they have some stoppers with White on the back end to be able to lock up those guys.
And Milano's healthy now.
I think that the Chiefs, they've just kind of been winning their games but limping along, and you see the Ravens and the Bills in that rearview mirror playing really, really good over the last couple of weeks. It could make things interesting in the AFC, but definitely the Bills are a team that everybody's looking at.
I know Aaron Rodgers is having a phenomenal year, and he's probably odds-on favorite to win the MVP, but I think now you can make a case that Josh Allen's right up there with him. I mean, you look at the season that he's had and the way that he's matured. I mean, he was the bottom as far as percentage-wise for 2 straight years. Now he's in the top 5. He just has turned his game around. He's big, he's strong, he can run the ball, he finds Diggs, he finds those guys, and the Bills Mafia loves him. I mean, they really, the fan base has embraced this kid. I think they're a scary good team. They're even going to have 6,700 fans at this game, so I think it's kind of interesting, too, that they'll be able to have some fans at this game. I know we talked a little bit about the NFC West, and you're going to keep with that kind of theme and talk about the Rams and Cardinals. And this is a big game for both these two teams. The last 3 meetings that these teams have played, the Rams have scored at least 31 points and won all 3. But in this matchup, no Akers, no Henderson, no Goff, no Cooper Kupp. So, but
yeah, McVay's going to have to pull some magic out of his hat. He's actually 7-0 since he's taken over as the Rams head coach against the Cardinals, the team that the Rams have absolutely dominated. Did it earlier this year as well, and really Goff had been amazing versus them. We're going to see John Wolford take over for the Rams. We're probably going to have to see Malcolm Brown lead them in the backfield. As you said, Henderson is out. Kupp's going to be out. So
Akers is out.
They're going to have to do a magic trick here on the offensive side of the football to be able to put up some points. They had a really disappointing week coming off losing to Seattle 20-9, and the Cardinals were equally as disappointing, losing 20-12 last week.
Well, don't forget they lost to the Jets the week before as well. So the Rams, a team that 3 or 4 weeks ago we were talking about shoe-in to make the playoffs, back-to-back losses, have all the injuries now, and if they lose and Chicago wins, the Rams don't make the playoffs.
Yeah, that's the interesting thing, and from a standpoint of a bookmaking and handicapping and having the NFL playoffs be the NFL playoffs. Do you even want the Rams to find a way to make the playoffs if they're going to have to go into it with not enough healthy bodies? But from the standpoint of understanding the playoff implications of this game, if the Rams win, they're in. If the Cardinals win, they're in. Then it goes down to that Bears-Packers game.
If Chicago wins, they're in.
If Chicago wins against Packers, they're in. If Chicago loses and the Cardinals win, the Rams can backdoor and still sneak their way into the playoffs. So despite the fact that they're not
on the flip side, though, if the Rams win
and the
Bears lose, the Bears can backdoor their way in because of tiebreakers against the Cardinals.
Yeah, so it becomes a much bigger game. Obviously, the Cardinals have gone to a 3-point favorite. We were a little bit worried that Kyler Murray was potentially not going to play in this game after he suffered kind of that leg whip at the end of last week's game, but he practiced and is expected to play. So that's why you're seeing that line go with the Cardinals, the favorite. But like I said, the Rams have dominated this series. They still have that championship defense, but on the offensive side of the football, they've been really struggling. And, Goff, this isn't something new over the last several weeks that he had been bad. He dominated the Cardinals, but he hadn't been good for several weeks. And, maybe it's a blessing in disguise for this Ram team that, he breaks his thumb, and we're going to see some. I think that Wolford hasn't taken a professional.
He has not,
for like 2 years with the Arizona Hot Shots in the Alliance Football League was the last time he had like a live game action. So maybe something to look for Cardinals in the first half as this guy gets the game speed under him. But McVay is a magician and a wizard when he puts game plans together, and we'll see what the Rams come up with. But it could be interesting, a good fun game to watch. Probably potentially leaning a little bit to the under, watching the Cardinals try and run the ball, not make mistakes, not let the Rams turn them over, and just be conservative and try and play with their defense to not allow the Rams to do anything.
Well, McVay was yelling at Goff a couple of times coming off the field before the injury, so it's obvious he hasn't been happy with his play of late, and that loss to the Jets really could be a catastrophic loss to them if they end up not making the playoffs. But they can do some scoreboard watching as well. I mean, if Green Bay is up by double digits or a huge score early in the game against the Bears, I mean the Rams kind of know then they can lose the game and they're still going to backdoor, and they have an extra week to get some of those guys healthy. I'm going to jump over to the AFC West, and I know it's a meaningless game, but I have to talk about our Las Vegas Raiders and the Denver Broncos. It's a Raider team that found a way to lose that game against the Dolphins. They found a lot of ways to lose of late. They've lost 5 of their last 6 games. If they would have lost to the Jets, not for that miracle Hail Mary to Ruggs, they would have lost 6 straight. It's a team that over the second half of the season, 3 straight years now, they've really faltered. How'd you like to have the Raiders, their win total at 7.5, and have the over? They were 7-5, they were 5-1, and you're sitting now sweating week 17 to see them get to.
They were favored to make the playoffs.
Yep, they were so good. They did beat Denver earlier in the season here in Vegas, 37-12. They've really struggled though playing in Colorado. They've lost 4 straight years. I think it's Raiders that want to kind of build on last year. They won 7 games. If they can at least go 8-8, although you don't make the postseason, I think it's a mild victory for them to finish this off. Still some rumblings about Carr. I think he's had a pretty good season. You've got Waller, you've got Jacobs, but that defense needs to be addressed in the offseason. I know we kind of differ a little bit. I like the Raiders a little bit in this game. I know you like Denver, and it has been a really tough place for them to play. Drew Lock turns the ball over a lot. We'll see if the Raiders defense can step up week 17, but the Raiders are a small favorite here, and I'm guessing Gruden really wants to finish this year with a victory after a team that was 5-1 and, as we talked about, looked like a shoo-in to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and my just looking at this game, you have one team in the Raiders that had those playoff aspirations and kind of got dashed last week and eliminated from the playoffs, and Denver's been eliminated from the playoffs for quite some time. Getting that home game, Drew Lock still trying to solidify himself as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos so that they don't go pick somebody. You got a lot of guys fighting for spots there in Denver. If you go back and watch the game last week, the Denver lost to the Chargers. They lost 16-13 last week to the Chargers in L.A. Was a game the Broncos probably should have won by 2 touchdowns. They completely dominated the Chargers, and Jerry Jeudy, who had, I think, 16 targets in the game, dropped about 6 of them, and I think 3 of them would have gone for first downs and a late game.
The late one would have put him in field goal range at least.
And they had some missed field goals, but Denver was the better team in that game against L.A., and now getting back home, and again, a good team that's not pouting. They've been out of the playoffs for quite some time, continuing to play hard. I just think this is a bad spot potentially for the Raiders, and the fact that they were motivated and that now they're kind of lost their luster.
And they haven't played well there. I mean, again, 4 straight losses. So we'll see how they get up for that game. But they're a small favorite, not a whole lot of line movement in that game. The last two we're going to finish with, number one is the Sunday night game, the flex game between the Washington football team and the Philadelphia Eagles. It's in Philly. Washington's a small favorite. If Washington wins that game, they're in. If they lose that game, the winner of the afternoon game between the Giants and Cowboys is in. Doesn't matter who it is. They're not going to have a winning record. But, hey, you have a chance to make the playoffs. You don't know if Alex Smith is going to play. You don't know if Terry McLaurin's going to play. You don't know if Antonio Gibson's going to play. You're going up against a young Eagle team with Jalen Hurts, his 4th straight start, that has kind of turned the corner a little bit, has gotten a little bit healthier with Deshaun Jackson and Goddard and Zach Ertz. But, hey, Washington can make the playoffs and win the East with a 7-9 record if they can win on Sunday night against the Philadelphia Eagles.
Flex to Sunday night because it really doesn't affect anything else that happens earlier in the day. Obviously, the Giants and Dallas, whoever wins that game is going to be
they're in the driver's seat at that point, waiting, and they're Eagle fans.
Hope that the Eagles can knock them off. This game, Washington is a 1.5-point favorite. It's been as high as 2.5 and come back down after Alex Smith and McLaurin and Gibson didn't practice on Wednesday. We'll see as the week goes on where those guys get to. But obviously, Washington it needs Alex Smith to play in this game after releasing Haskins last week. If you had a chance to watch the Washington football team play Carolina last week. Again, I talked about Denver being a better team than the Chargers last week. Washington was a better football team than the Carolina Panthers last week, and Dwayne Haskins almost single-handedly lost that game for the Washington football team. I mean, his turnovers were awful. He missed a lot of wide-open receivers in the game. They were able to bring Heineke in late in the game, and he was actually able to move the ball, getting the kid out of Old Dominion that hadn't had any playing time with no McLaurin and stuff like that. So they were able to move the ball, just showing how ineffective that Haskins was. And then that led to his release on top of the whole nightclub,
a lot of off the field stuff too that caused that.
But he was really, really bad, and he had beaten this Eagle team in Week 1. Haskins was the quarterback in Week 1 when the Redskins beat them 27-17. In that game, Wentz was intercepted twice, and the Eagles were sacked 8 times. So Washington absolutely dominated them on the defensive side of the football. We'll see if Hurts can turn things around, as well as he played, and they won that home game against the Saints. That defense was just equally bad on their trip to Arizona, as the Cardinals were able to kind of move the ball on them at will. We'll see if Logan Thomas can kind of do the same thing in the secondary. But you said it. The key to this game is Alex Smith, McLaurin, and Gibson back. McKissick has still been a big part of them out of the backfield, but something crazy always in Philadelphia. We'll see if Peterson can get these kids up to play, a home game. The last time they were there was Hurts' first start, and they were not able to knock off the Saints. So if this team is motivated, we can see Sanders and Hurts doing well on offense, but I think the really big thing is on the defensive side of the football, can they stop Washington if Washington has all the pieces of the puzzle back?
But even with those pieces, it's not like an offensive powerhouse. They're a team that kind of grinds it out a little bit. So I think it'll be interesting.
They're not going to turn the ball over. They're not
with
going to
Alex
make mistakes.
Smith,
They're going to let that defense dominate. And Chase Young, I promise you, Chase Young at some point in time in this game is going to get a sack on Hurts, get a fumble on Hurts, bat a ball up in the air, do something special on defense, and that's what Washington has been able to stay in these games week after week after week with doing on the defensive side of the football.
You have to wonder, too, there's been some rumblings that, would they make a coaching change in the offseason? The Eagles could be Doug Peterson's last game there. I don't think they will, but there's been some rumblings. But I think the bigger question is Carson Wentz. He's got that big contract, 4-year deal. I think it's $158 million. That doesn't kick in until next year. Is this his last game if they lose? Or regardless, they're out. But is this his last game as a Philadelphia Eagle?
Yeah, and they don't have anything to play for. So, I mean, they're only playing to ruin Washington's season.
Yep.
So, yeah, and they are a veteran team. They are banged up. They've had a significant number of injuries on the Eagles. So they do have potential to potentially rest some guys and not play in this game. And if you see that, you'll see that line on Washington.
I don't think that's going to happen. I think they're going to want to go out and try to win this game, but we'll see. They're a small favorite now, Washington. We'll see. I think if Alex Smith's announced that he is going to play, you're going to see this number tick up a little bit more. I'm going to finish with, hey, the Chicago Bears and the Green Bay Packers. I mean, one of the biggest rivalries in all of football. We know the great season the Packers have had. They win this game. They're the number 1 seed in the NFC. Aaron Rodgers is probably going to be the MVP. We saw them just dominate Tennessee last week on prime time. And it's a Bear team that started so good, then went on that long losing streak, now has won a few games in a row, and they sit at 8-7. They have an opportunity to get into the playoffs for the second time in 3 years. Mitchell Trubisky has kind of turned it around a little bit. You have to wonder, do they end up giving him a short-term deal? Does he stay there? Did the Bears do enough to save Nagy and Ryan Pace, their GM? But it's a huge rivalry game. I mean, the Bears are probably going to be doing a little bit of scoreboard watching themselves, but I think they want to win this game. They're at home. They're almost a touchdown dog, not quite. But, hey, it's a big game, and it's a big rivalry between these two teams.
Yeah, we actually opened the Packers 6, and it's been bet down to 5.5. There are some 5s out there, so there are some Bear backers out there that feels like they're going to be able to stay in this game. I think it was
Trubisky's first game back.
Yeah, they lost 40-25.
41-25, yeah.
And really it was a late comeback by the
Right.
Bears to trying to get in that game. They were getting beat up even more than that. And again, they're going to have to find a way to stop Davante Adams. I mean, it's you watch the Packers play in the heavy snow on the ground, and the Titans just didn't have anything to match up with him. And then you introduced A.J. Dillon
Right.
to the mix to go along with Jones, and so he's got all the weapons. And I think that's why
Right.
the Packers
You
are.
had a good stat, though, about the Bears' offense. Is it 30 points in 4 straight games?
Yeah.
You talked about.
Well, now it's 4. It's 4 games.
Four
But I
games.
think over the last decade, the Bears hadn't scored more than 30 points. I think 3 times in 2017 they had scored more than 30 points, and so they've scored more 30-point games this year than they have in the last decade in any single year. So they've done something. They found something on offense.
It's the running game. Since week 10, David Montgomery is second only to Derrick Henry in rushing yards. So for whatever reason, he was averaging, I think, 3.6 yards a carry through week 10. After week 10, he's averaging almost 5 yards a carry. So that's a huge difference. If you can run the ball, it takes a lot of pressure off a young quarterback like Trubisky.
Well, and I think that's the key to the Bears staying in this game. They have to run the ball, keep Aaron Rodgers off the field. Hicks on defense, being able to stop that running game. Don't allow Jones or Dillon to get the running game going, and you got to find a way to stop. I mean, to me, you put somebody in Davante Adams' face and you have somebody over the top, and if you beat me with MVS or Lazard or Tanya and whatever, somebody else
Right.
catch the ball other than Davante Adams. And I asked the same question myself when you play the Bills. Just guard Diggs, put somebody over the top of Diggs, and see if Allen can beat you somewhere else. But these superstar receivers, you just watch them have incredible games. But, the Bears are going to have to find a way to stop Adams. And this is a game that you talked about scoreboard watching. There's a lot of interest all over the league in this game as from a
Green Bay
standpoint
could be too, but yeah,
not Seattle and
right.
New Orleans and the Rams,
right.
and on the AFC side of things, it's going to be real interesting. We still have teams fighting for spots, and the Colts on the outside looking in of watching that Ravens game and the Dolphins game and other stuff. So this week 17 always is a super interesting week, and it's a lot of fun that all the games are on Sunday. So we don't have any Thursday or Saturday.
A bunch
or
of
Monday
late games on Sunday
yeah,
too.
I think it's 7 10 o'clock games, 8 1:25
Awesome.
games, and then the 5:20 games. So Sunday, strap your seatbelt into the couch and get ready to watch football all day long.
Real quick on the Bear game though, for me, I'm more worried about their defense right now than their offense. Defensively, I think they've looked soft of late. They haven't been that same dominant team. And you remember when these two teams played the first time, they had held Green Bay to the 3rd and long that first series, only rushed 3 guys, let Rodgers sit back there and just scan the defensive secondary forever, and he threw to Davante Adams for a touchdown pass, and really the game was over at that point. So we'll see defensively if they can step up. And Week 17, what's interesting is if you would rewind 4 weeks, we'd think there's no chance that the Colts and the Rams could possibly not be in the postseason. There's a real chance that both those two teams don't make it to the postseason, and in both cases, if healthy, they were teams that could have maybe gotten to the Super Bowl. So,
it was an epic collapse by the Colts last week, a 24-7 lead against the Steelers, and Steelers had really been struggling and kind of found their groove late in that game, and now we'll take some time off. The Steelers aren't going to play their guys. looking to kind of get themselves healthy for the playoffs.
Well, what's interesting for the Colts is that they're double-digit favorites. The Ravens are double-digit favorites. The Browns are almost double-digit favorites. The only small number is the Dolphin game. But if the Dolphins do happen to win that game against Buffalo, you have to kind of figure with Pittsburgh resting their guys, although some COVID issues for Cleveland, that Cleveland wins that game. And the Ravens are double-digit favorites. It might not matter how many points that the Colts beat the Jags by. They could be on the outside looking in. You have to wonder if they move on from Phillip Rivers, too. There's been some rumblings that maybe a possible destination for Carson Wentz is the Indianapolis Colts. But well, it's going to be interesting in the offseason for sure.
Well, let's get through Week 17 and some playoffs before we start looking to next year.
All right, guys, don't forget, Happy New Year to everybody. Be safe, stay healthy, have some fun, but, of course, control it the best you can. We know times are a little bit different right now. Don't forget about the STN mobile app. We'll get you signed up in a really short period of time. It's fun. It brings the sportsbook to the palm of your hand, both the race and sports side. We still have that $100 sign-up bonus going on for new customers right now.
Happy New Year.
Thanks, guys.